The feeling of
Right.
people being out to get you, and often that being based on pretty clear evidence that that's a real threat. Like, how does that affect the way you go through your life?
So it's a very weird and scary thing knowing that when you come into a space, and I'm a lot more confident about being Jewish than I ever was before. But I've been in lectures. I have a friend who is I think he's what is he? He's like Taimani Jew. He is not visually white. He is not, and he's been in classes where the professor's like, all Jews are white and they're oppressors, and he's just like, I'm a Jew, I'm in your class, like I'm not white. Like not all Jews are white. Like literally
This sounds like a great class. I'm sure this professor didn't have an axe to grind.
I know, and listen, you meet, I know Persians who, they're my parents' age, and they're like, yeah, we have to leave on the back of a camel in the middle of the night or else we'd be murdered, right? So there's a lot of different, people, and the way people perceive, Jews, I know, is like just incredibly, privileged and very rich. And there are reasons why maybe that perception started out, and I, we don't have to go into histories and understanding, but for how I go throughout the world, like when I was younger, I used to be very frightened, especially when I was applying to programs for college and doing my master's, leading with the fact that I'm Jewish and the fact that especially that I'm Orthodox. I usually wait until after, I'm accepted to something or a job has accepted me and sent me paperwork before I'm like, by the way, I'm Orthodox and I have like religious holidays because, there is discrimination and there are issues. And the truth is, if they gave me a hard time for it, I would fight or I would, leave, and I don't put up with that kind of stuff anymore. Definitely not. But yeah, like listen, I walk down the street, on Shabbat, and when cars drive by, I don't know if you ever walk down Pico where, a lot of Jews are, you'll see that more and more they're starting to build these like metal poles so that cars can't ram into pedestrians. And that started in Israel. That's a big thing around bus stops. They have these big pillars because people would just run over civilians. And here we've had some attacks. And I remember my first year here. It was right after there was a shooting in a synagogue. And I remember it was Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, one of our high holidays. And I was praying, and all of a sudden all the lights went out, like the power went out, and everybody kind of like paused, and you could see that everybody was like, is this is this going to be an attack? And everybody, like you could really feel everybody rallying. They're like, okay, if we're going to be attacked, at least we're going to continue in our service. But there is, a very acute, and whether, I think a lot of it, we'll say there is a lot of warranted, Jews are disproportionately have anti-Semitic attacks and different things to other groups, especially to our population size. We're like 0.0 whatever it is, something,
in the global population, it's
tiny.
Like 1.2%.
We are very small, but the disproportionate amount when you look at reports of, and this isn't to say that other groups aren't also attacked, and that's not to put down the plight of other groups that really do suffer, but I think that the issue with Jews is that people look at us and they're like, you guys have no issues. You guys, it's okay to be anti-Semitic to you guys. But it is, you look at all the reports, it's disproportionate to our population. And it is scary. I have a friend who got, they tried to beat him up. Most Jews aren't as muscular as he is. He's very muscular, and he was able to fight his way out. And the other guy ended up in the hospital, not him. But I know people, who've been attacked, and my synagogue has been attacked. And it's sorry, I'm pointing. I don't know what direction I'm pointing in.
North is kind of vaguely like that way.
There you go.
North is vaguely that way.
So yeah, it's definitely something that I hold with awareness. But at the same time, I wish, I actually am a little bit jealous of boy Jews, weird way to say it, because male Jews, because they wear, I guess you guys would call them skull caps, they're called kippahs, and they're identifiably Jewish. And I've spoken to my friends recently, and I'm like, I wish I had something to wear that when people saw it, they knew I was Jewish. Because as scary as it can be, it's not just my religion, it's my identity, it's my world, and it's my life. And the older I get, the more I want people to know that I'm Jewish, and I want them. And listen, I've also had people meet me and they're like, oh, like you're Orthodox, but you seem so normal. And I'm like, well, I don't know that, but we're just also people, I really have a lot of resentment against shows. Ooh, this might get blacklisted. Against shows like, Unorthodox is more nuanced, and you should read the book. I think it's I have issues with the show, but the book is like a really touching, incredible story. But shows like My Unorthodox Life. You see me here, I'm very modern, I'm out in the world, and I have friends who were students of the woman who is in that reality show, and they're like, oh, like in our community, people wore pants and there were musicals in the school, and it was very modern. So it's more modern than I am. And then she turns around and she's like, well, I wasn't, and people can have their own experience. And it is, especially when you're younger and you don't understand why you're doing things and you don't really have as much autonomy, it can be very stifling. I'm not gonna deny that. And some people, like if you read Unorthodox, she was very stifled and people have real stories, but I hate it when people are just like, just bashing on Jews and Orthodoxy, and it's just not even accurate what they are showing. And that's very, My Unorthodox Life is that my friends who are in my community are like, oh, I know her. She taught me, and she was like, it was in a modern school. And that doesn't help with anti-Semitism and anti-Orthodox sentiment.
Right, yeah, I suppose there's sort of I suppose it's probably for an average person, there's not much of a distinction, but I could see there being sort of anti-Jewish sentiment, and then there's anti-Orthodox sentiment. And it even gets, complicated, because my understanding is I'm trying to learn more about sort of Israeli politics and what's going on there. Like, that gets really interesting. Because there you essentially have all of these different factions, and there you'll have like people who are secular Jews and people who are like, we're not down with that kind of stuff. And it's increasingly becoming a kind of a problem actually in Israel between the ultra-Orthodox and kind of everyone else who is running Israeli society. So it's again, that's a specific case. I get for your, an average person who's doing awful stuff here, it's like they're not making that distinction. But
listen, also two Jews, three opinions. Israel's a very good example of what happens when you have that mentality in running a country.
Yes.